ha 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 ha. Stop, Jesus.
What? You're too short.
This content is a purely creative work aimed at enhancing
English conversation skills.
Stop, Jesus.
Why again?
This story is divided into two parts. The characters Jesus and Buddha do not know Tom, Parker, Olivia, or Deshawn. One clear day in New York, a creator is eavesdropping at a Starbucks. At Starbucks, 4 people were discussing the movie Prometheus in depth. They were analyzing the scenes they had recently watched. Deshawn said,
"This movie is really deep. Have you ever thought about how ironic it is that a journey to find our origins ends in doom?"
Tom nodded and added,
Yeah, like in Greek mythology, Prometheus stole fire from the gods for humanity. This movie explores the creator and creature relationship deeply. The spaceship being named Prometheus is a clever metaphor.
Parker scratched his head and said,
I found the movie too complicated. I get that the creator-creature relationship is tragic, but why do they want to hurt each other?
Olivia's eyes sparkled as she asked,
Then why did the creators make humans? Was it just for fun?
Tom smiled kindly and answered,
Maybe, but the movie tries to explore their intentions through the process of creators making humans, who then create something like David. David learns the role of a creator from humans and tries to become one himself.
Tom was always smiling kindly as he worked at Starbucks. Deshawn looked at Olivia and said,
"Olivia, don't you also like to make things? Like drawing or building something cool with the blocks?"
Deshawn's voice had a cool rapper vibe. Olivia nodded.
Yeah, I want to build a big castle with Lego blocks.
Parker laughed and said,
So that's the joy of creation. But the movie also shows the danger and conflict hidden behind that joy.
Tom led the conversation again.
The part where the engineer creates humans and David tries to surpass humans was really striking. And Elizabeth Shaw's decision to go to the engineer's planet instead of returning to Earth was fascinating.
Deshawn nodded.
Yeah, she seemed to have a faith-driven need to understand the relationship with the creators and resolve the tragedy.
Parker raised his hand and said,
I think this movie has a lot of religious symbolism, like the cross necklace and many references to Jesus Christ.
Tom agreed.
Yeah, it seems like director Ridley Scott wanted to depict the complex relationship between creator and creature through the Christian God and humanity.
Olivia tilted her head and asked,
So do you think Jesus and Buddha watched this movie too?
The 4 of them laughed for a moment. They were deeply immersed in their own world, but in a corner of Starbucks, Jesus and Buddha were quietly listening to their conversation. The 2 holy figures seemed to be trying to understand this world better through the humans' conversation. Jesus spoke softly.
This movie deals with really profound themes. The relationship between creator and creature and the resulting conflict and tragedy are topics we often discuss.
Buddha nodded and replied quietly,
Indeed, humans always seek their origins and face much conflict and tragedy in the process. But through that process, they grow and become better beings.
Olivia furrowed her brow in thought and asked,
So could Jesus and Buddha be aliens too?
Tom and Parker joined in with Olivia's idea. Tom laughed and said,
Maybe, Olivia. After all, we all come from somewhere. It aligns with the idea of portraying aliens as powerful beings.
Parker agreed.
Yeah, we're all beings that started somewhere. That's the mystery of creation.
The 4 of them laughed again and continued their conversation. They were deeply exploring the relationship between creators and creatures and the resulting conflict and tragedy through the movie Prometheus, sharing their thoughts with each other. Deshawn said,
One of the most impressive scenes was the first encounter with the engineer. The tension when David spoke to the engineer was incredible.
Tom nodded.
Yes, when David asked the engineer, Why did you make us? The silence that followed was breathtaking.
Parker continued.
And when the engineer tore off David's head and killed Peter Wayland, it was shocking. It felt like everything was falling apart.
Olivia's eyes widened as she asked,
Why was the engineer so angry?
Deshawn explained.
Maybe the engineer felt fear and anger at the humans they created trying to surpass them. David was just a tool to them.
Tom added,
And the part where David tells Wayland, This is the end. There is nothing, was also striking.
Parker nodded.
Yes. That scene showed the limits of humanity. No matter how advanced science and technology get, we are ultimately powerless before our creators.
Tom led the conversation again.
And Elizabeth Shaw choosing to go to the engineer's planet instead of returning to Earth in the final scene was also impressive. She left not just out of curiosity, but out of a deep faith in finding their origins.
Deshawn agreed.
Yes, her decision showed a deep belief and will beyond mere scientific inquiry.
Parker raised his hand and said,
I found that scene really moving. Elizabeth Shaw showed courage by overcoming her fears and embarking on a journey to find new truths.
Olivia asked with sparkling eyes.
So, was Elizabeth Shaw trying to become a new creator?
Tom smiled and replied,
Maybe, Olivia. She was on a quest to find new truths and create a better future, and in that process she could become her own kind of creator.
Deshawn continued.
Another impressive scene was the engineer's sacrifice. The scene at the beginning where the engineer drinks the black liquid and sacrifices himself to create life was really powerful. It showed how closely creation and destruction are linked.
Tom nodded.
Yes, that scene symbolically showed the origins of humanity. The sacrifice leading to the birth of humanity made it even more meaningful.
Parker continued.
And the scene where Elizabeth Shaw performs a cesarean section on herself using an automated surgery machine was shocking. It showed her strong will and survival instinct.
Olivia asked with a surprised expression.
Why did Elizabeth Shaw do such a scary thing?
Tom explained.
She did it to remove the alien creature inside her. In the process, she overcame her fears and showed a strong will to survive.
Deshawn added.
That scene symbolically showed the human will to surpass their limits. Elizabeth Shaw was determined to find the truth, even at the cost of her own safety.
Tom led the conversation again.
And, as I keep mentioning, the final scene where Elizabeth Shaw leaves for the engineer's planet with David's help was really moving. Instead of simply returning to Earth, she took the risk to find a greater truth.
Parker agreed.
Yes, that scene showed the unending human spirit of inquiry and courage. Elizabeth Shaw showed courage by overcoming her fears and embarking on a journey to find new truths.
Olivia asked with sparkling eyes.
So, Elizabeth Shaw is really brave, right?
Tom smiled and replied.
Yes, Olivia. Elizabeth Shaw is really brave. She overcame her fears and set off to find new truths. And in that process, she could become her own kind of creator.
The four of them laughed again and continued their conversation. They were deeply exploring the relationship between creators and creatures and the resulting conflict and tragedy through the movie Prometheus, sharing their thoughts with each other. In the corner, Jesus spoke softly to Buddha.
It's really moving to see humans overcoming their fears and setting out to find new truths. They always seem to strive to become better beings.
Indeed, their spirit of inquiry and courage will eventually lead them to become better beings.
The four people continued to explore the relationship between creators and creatures and the resulting conflict and tragedy through the movie Prometheus. They analyzed the movie from their unique perspectives and shared their opinions, deepening their understanding of each other. Their conversation went on, and through it, they understood each other's thoughts and feelings more deeply. Parker sipped his coffee and got lost in thought for a moment. Then he suddenly laughed and said,
But don't we sometimes act like robots too, trying to mimic David? Like waking up to the alarm in the morning and moving automatically.
Tom laughed and agreed.
True, sometimes we act too mechanically. Getting ready for work is almost on autopilot. But unlike David, I put a bit more effort into making coffee.
Deshawn laughed and said,
Same here, especially before a performance. But I move almost like a robot. I always repeat the same routine before going on stage. It helps me stay calm.
Olivia asked with sparkling eyes.
Do you think David drank coffee too?
Tom laughed and replied,
Maybe David wanted to enjoy coffee like humans. But being an android, I'm not sure if he could taste it.
Parker nodded.
Yeah, David seemed to imitate human behavior while understanding his limits, which made him an interesting character.
Tom added,
And the part where David says, I was designed like this because you people are more comfortable interacting with your own kind. was striking. It shows that humans prefer interacting with beings similar to themselves.
Deshawn agreed.
Yeah, that's probably why we try to design robots to look like humans. It feels more natural.
Olivia laughed and said,
Then do you think we'll have robot friends like David someday?
Tom smiled and replied,
Maybe, Olivia. With advancing technology, we might have android friends like David, but then we might need to act more human.
Parker raised his hand and said,
Right. As technology advances, our behavior will inevitably change. But what's important is the values we live by.
The four of them laughed again and continued their conversation. They were deeply exploring the relationship between creators and creatures and the resulting conflict and tragedy through the movie Prometheus, sharing their thoughts with each other. Tom quoted the movie,
When Elizabeth Shaw asks, "Where do they go?" and her father replies, "Everyone has their own word. Heaven, Arcadia, Zion, paradise. Whatever it's called, I know it's someplace beautiful." That scene was really impressive.
Deshawn added,
And when David says, "The trick, William Potter, is not minding that it hurts," that part was really meaningful.
Parker nodded.
Yeah, those scenes deeply explore human existence and their beliefs.
Olivia asked again.
So, could David feel and think like a human?
Tom replied,
Maybe, Olivia. David seemed to imitate humans while trying to understand the world in his own way.
Deshawn continued,
And when Elizabeth Shaw asks, "How do you know it's beautiful?" and her father replies, "Because that's what I choose to believe," that scene was really touching.
Tom added,
Yes, that scene showed human belief and willpower beautifully.
The four of them laughed again and continued their conversation. They were deeply exploring the relationship between creators and creatures and the resulting conflict and tragedy through the movie Prometheus, sharing their thoughts with each other. In the corner, Jesus smiled and said to Buddha,
I have a feeling we're going to get along well with those four.
Buddha smiled brightly and replied,
I think so too.